You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com. And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market from unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the Option Block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group and co-hosts Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian from OptionPit.com, Andrew the Rock Lobster GIOVINAZZI from OptionPit.com, and Henry the Flowmaster Schwartz from SBUX. The Option Block is brought to you by SBUX. When it comes to trading volatility, trust SBUX, the creator of the VIX Index, for in-depth and relevant information. SBUX's tools and services gives you up-to-date trade insights, analysis, and positions of VIX options and futures. No matter what kind of trader you are, there's plenty of useful information to take the guesswork out of creating your portfolio strategy and to help you make more educated moves in the market. Visit www.cboe.com/VIX today to learn more. The views expressed herein are those of the speakers and do not necessarily reflect the views of CBOE Global Markets Incorporated or any of its subsidiaries, collectively CBOE. The information provided is for general education and information purposes only. There are important risks associated with transacting in any of the CBOE products or any of the digital assets discussed here. Before engaging in any transactions in those products or digital assets, it is important for market participants to carefully review the disclosures and disclaimers contained at www.cboe.com/US_disclaimers. These products and digital assets are complex and are suitable only for sophisticated market participants. These products involve the risk of loss, which can be substantial and, depending on the type of product, can exceed the amount of money deposited in establishing the position. Market participants should put at risk only funds they can afford to lose without affecting their lifestyle. And now, get ready to hit the Option Block.
All right, everybody. That music means it is time to kick off our broadcast week here. Another fun week on the old Options Insider Radio Network. Hope you had a great weekend. Hope you're settling in for a fun trading week. My name, of course, Mark Longo from theoptionsinsider.com, as well as, of course, from the network upon which you were probably binging all weekend long, driving up my bandwidth bills. It's all right. We love you all out there. That's what the network's for at the end of the day. If nobody was binging it, there'd be no point, after all. So keep binging. If you do like what you hear, hey, you're driving up my bandwidth bills, least you can do. Throw some stars our way. It does help all the new folks continue to discover. It could be stars, a like, a comment, a review, whatever the platforms let you do. There's so many different platforms that it's available on now. They're all different. So whatever they let you do does help new folks continue to discover the content. And, of course, if you want to discover more content in your lives, you want to join us later this week for a great pro Q&A session. You want to join us on Friday after Vol Views. You're tired of having your week end with Vol Views. You want more content in your lives. You want to ride into the weekend with a whole mess, a whole freaking hour of unusual activity. Options Oddities will be your huckleberry. Only one place to go to get all that fun. By the way, it's the 31st. You guys are about to take another pro trading crate out of my hot little hands. I can see the pile of goodies over here in the studio. It's a good pile of goodies, listeners. You want it, trust me. I don't want to send it to you, but hey, I'm nice. Why not? So theoptionsinsider.com/pro is the place to go to get the key to unlock all of that goodness. You get the exclusive shows, 200 plus hours worth of content waiting for you. The second you hit the button, you get, of course, your name in the hat for the pro trading crates. Don't tell the Rock Lobster. He is quite jealous of you. You get live access to this, everything else we do. You get exclusive early access to some fun, cool stuff, all kinds of things. TheOptionsInsider.com/pro. More things being added all the time. Go figure it out for yourselves. Go see what they have. Go see what's cooking. Go see what's coming down the pike. TheOptionsInsider.com/pro. As we commence our broadcast week, yes, it's time, listeners. Shake off the cobwebs, the haze from the weekend. Maybe you're still sleeping it off. I don't know. Either way, it is time for a little bit of the old 80s wrestling trivia. Here we go. All right, listeners. I had an interesting time this weekend. I ended up going to the Bears summer training camp, the first one they had open to the public, I believe, one of the first ones. And it was kind of interesting to see what's going on. I was going to give the meatball a hard time because so far, at least, they're not looking great. Start to preseason, in spite of what you might have read on some of the links out there, some of the media saying, I was there, I watched it, I watched Justin and DJ Moore not make the connection, get picked, all kinds of fun. Defense looking a little better, maybe. So maybe there's some rays of sunshine there. But overall, it wasn't looking great. But it got me thinking, as I was there and coming into the show today, about the intersection of professional football and 80s and indeed pro wrestling in general. In fact, a lot of the big stars of today and yesteryear were former football players or dabbled in football. Of course, Brock Lesnar, Goldberg, all these guys today, Roman Reigns, they all dabbled in football. Even The Rock tried early on, I think, and got hurt. So there is a big intersection of pro football. Makes sense. Big, roided up guys in both of them. There's a lot of crossover between those two worlds. Let's get back to the 80s wrestling. And actually, let's move it forward a little bit into the early to mid 90s. That's where we're going to go right now. A little bit of spillover from the 80s. And there was an event, listeners. WrestleMania, the biggest event of the season, the showcase of the Immortals. And there was a kind of an infamous main event now. It happened at WrestleMania 11, involving one of the greatest professional football players of all time, certainly on the defensive side, Hall of Famer multiple times, probably the best to ever play this position. And he was involved in the main event of WrestleMania 11. It's one of the, outside of Mr. T, in that first WrestleMania 1 main event where they didn't really know what the hell they were doing. This is really kind of the only time since then that the main event's been a non-wrestler against a wrestler. I won't say who he wrestled. That could be a bonus point there. But I open up to you, by the way, we are joined now by the uncles to Mike's, Mr. Uncle Mike TOSAW from St. Charles Wealth Management, as well as a surprise guest starring spot by the Rock Lobster, Mr. Andrew GIOVINAZZI from OptionPit.com. I don't see any buzzes in here, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to be charitable because the Rock Lobster has trouble with 80s wrestling. This one is not exactly 80s wrestling. It's a little bit of a spillover into football, so maybe he has a second chance. Mr. Rock Lobster, sir, can you name a superstar football player on the defensive side from the 80s who may have main evented WrestleMania in 1995? So go ahead, just name a superstar.
I just thought it could be William the Refrigerator Perry, since you were going Chicago.
Okay, that's a good guess because he is a big player from the 80s. Not the fridge, though, unfortunately. He did get involved in some other stuff. That's not a bad guess. Big guy. The team, though, is not Chicago. I will give you a hint that he played for. Mr. Uncle Mike, and not buzzing. I'm surprised. I thought you'd be all over this one.
Yeah, this is tough. This is when I went WCW as a wrestling fan, or it's around that time. So it's too early. I don't think that Steve Mongo McMichael was involved yet in the WWF.
And it's not I'll give you that hint. It's not a bear.
It's not a bear. I know Reggie White was involved, but I don't know if he ever made the main event. I think that's too early for Reggie White, but this is a tough one, Mark, and I'm an honorable wrestling trivia hound, so I'm not Googling. I'm gonna go with Kevin Green.
Wow. I thought for sure you'd be all over this one. Football and wrestling head that you are. No, it was LT, Lawrence Taylor. He was the main event of WrestleMania 11 against Bam Bam Bigelow, April of 1995. So, yeah, kind of an infamous day. I don't think a lot of wrestlers are too happy to have a non-wrestler take up a main event spot, but interesting stuff. LT arguably the best to ever do it in terms of outside linebackers, at least, a position that has changed a lot. Maybe a little bit more infamous off the field for some of his antics. But I guess that kind of crosses over well with the wrestling demographic. So there you go, listeners. LT Lawrence Taylor, main eventing WrestleMania 11 as we keep on rolling right on into the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the trading block.
Wow, surprising. Big goose egg on that one today, listeners. I thought for sure the uncleist of Mike's, being the football and wrestling head that he is, that intersection, those two Venn diagrams would just speak to him. But alas, not today. Alas, also for the markets. They're kind of struggling to figure out what the hell they want to be today, listeners. They're up, they're down, they're slightly up, they're slightly down, they're kind of mixed. It's kind of where we are right now. S&P is kind of unched. Dow is now up about 0.1%, and the NASDAQ is up about 0.04. So again, mostly unched. They were red a few seconds ago when we started talking, so give it another couple of minutes, they'll be moving in another direction. Right now, a whole heck of a lot of nothing right now as we kick off the show. That means VIX actually getting some weekend juice back. Almost about exactly a full point, actually. It's at a 1390 when we commenced operations here on the show. It's up about exactly a point from where it was on the Thursday show. VXX getting frothy again, back up to an 88, up about 5 points. So maybe VIX looking like it doesn't really want to break that 13.5 handle for the latter portion of last week and coming into this week. It seems to get some support around there and seems to be firm again, or at least at that level for now. VXX 2290 up about 0.6 point. UVXY 16.25 up about 0.5 point. UVIX, such as it is, 370 up about 0.2 point. And VolQ, I just had Mr. Scott Nations, the creator of VolQ, on Vol Views on Friday. Check it out if you missed it. It was a fun time. Up about 0.75 point to 17.5 when we kicked off the show. And since nobody got it right, I guess we'll start with the rockingest of lobsters. Mr. Rock Lobster, sir. What is catching your eye out there in the markets to commence this trading week, sir?
I have to say, the most interesting thing has been Palantir. It's almost $20 again. I don't think it's been that high in like a year and a half, almost 2 years.
Yeah, things popping hard again.
So that's, I guess they do make money from AI. They have some earnings coming out in about 7 days. Could be interesting for folks that follow that thing. Crazy paper once again. There's a penny bid all the way to the 30s in the August 04 cycle. So I don't know what's got Palantir up 8% today, but I guess it's an AI stock that's less than $100. So people are going to buy it. So it goes to 100. Crazier things have happened. Second, I have to say, we don't have a lot of economic data this week. We got VIX up on a weekend effect. The VIX August future has not moved appreciably from $15 in the last couple days. So I think the market is just sitting, waiting for some Apple earnings, as far as I could tell. So I think we're kind of in this fugue state until Apple earnings come out. Then there's NVIDIA, mid-August. But I think the holidays are here. The weather's a little better on the East Coast, less rain. And as far as that goes, that's kind of all I'm seeing. I mean, I think the 4,600 level is going to be a hard one to breach, whatever. Simply because, we need, I think we need a little longer train of earnings, but we haven't been at this level. Again, 2 years ago. Yeah, I mean, 2 years ago, we were sitting here, like we were at 4406 on October, or this was, again, beginning of August. So we are, S&P 500 is 100 points higher than that. So we've basically gone through the pop. We have gone through the rate rise in inflation. SPX is essentially where it was 2 years ago. And with the Q on its way back up, to that level, mostly driven by a certain amount of stocks. I think we need a little bit more Main Street follow through, and I think those are still going to be the sleepers for the rest of this year. And it's, again, a kind of an odd market, but I don't think we have enough good news to sort of power stocks through 4,600, at least for this week until Apple earnings come out on the 3rd. So it's kind of like one of those snooze fests, like one of my students just said, feels like sitting in a lukewarm bath, and that's kind of where we are feeling right now.
That's some good living, just hanging out in a lukewarm bath, right? Just enjoying life.
It is a way to live, I would say.
It is an apt description for this market as we turn red again now. Yeah, just kind of vacillating around a whole bunch of nothing. You're right, kind of back to where we were a couple of years ago, in spite of all the madness that has gone on out there in the market. So intriguing stuff going on. Let's go on out to the land of Uncle Mike, where he's still kicking himself over not knowing LT versus Bam Bam Bigelow. But, Mr. Uncle Mike, in addition to that, great shame, sir, what is catching your eye in the markets today?
Well, I mean, it's that was a kind of a period in pro wrestling to where it really wasn't that good. I think WWF was struggling. I think Hulk Hogan had already gone over to WCW, and not a good era for wrestling. Now, me being the wrestling historian that I am, I'm not trying to make that as an excuse. I should have known that, but that was a tough time when you have a retired football player against Bam Bam Bigelow, and I liked Bam Bam Bigelow as a wrestler. I don't know if he really got as much push as he should have, but he had a lot of cool things about him, I thought, as a wrestler. But anyway, yeah, with this market right now, I think it's kind of interesting with where you're looking at things. The trade or the stock that kind of is sticking out to me right now. Sorry, let me just bring it up. Not necessarily sticking out in a major way, but I think it's kind of like a microcosm of where the market is right now is Microsoft. Microsoft was on just such a ridiculous, insane tear for quite a while, and it's cooling off, and it's still continuing to cool off. It's not down in a major way today. It's down, I believe, roughly $4 on the day. But as we're looking at it, the question then is going to be, what reason does Microsoft have to go higher? And then what reason does the market have to go higher? And I agree with Andrew in that 4,600 is going to be a tough number to go through in the SPX. But stranger things have happened. Who knows? We could be at 5,800 tomorrow. But I think with where we are right now, it appears that the market is just kind of gathering some steam for another run higher, or it could be topping out, getting ready to head in the down direction. And so I'm definitely of the cautious camp right now in the stock market. In terms of the bonds, they are up slightly on the day today, nothing major, but we are getting a little bit of a bid in the 10-year. And I agree with Andrew in that I think we are just kind of waiting on Apple earnings because what would they come out, in like 20 minutes or so, I believe. But yeah, back to you, Mark.
Actually, today you're off cycle again. This is the post-midnight earnings. You remember it goes back and forth. Sometimes it's pre-market, sometimes it's post-midnight. That's how it goes with Apple. They kind of roll it around a little bit. I get it. It's a confusing schedule. Check out appleearnings.com. They'll explain it all for you there, Mr. Uncle Mike. Going back to 80s wrestling really quickly, I just noticed one of our producers, our keen-eared and keen-eyed producers on the network, letting me know that a friend of the network, Sergeant Slaughter, one of our many fans and Twitter followers, just tweeting a few minutes ago. It was 8 years ago today, Mr. Uncle Mike, that Roddy Piper died. So he's still apparently brokenhearted over that. Surprising. I didn't realize it was 8 years ago today. So there you go. Bringing it all back to 80s wrestling, as all things are here.
It was that long ago either.
Yeah, it seemed more recent to me than that, but 8 years ago today. So apparently Sergeant Slaughter still working through his grief over the passing of one Roddy Piper, as we all are, listeners. As we keep on rolling, let's go on out. Let's see if we can work through it together with a little bit of options paper out there today. See if we can find any, quite frankly. And let's see where we got. Maybe, who knows? Maybe today is blowing the doors off and everyone and their mother has to get some of them their options. Let's start in the land of VIX, listeners. And the answer in VIX land is it a banger day? And the answer is, it's not bad. It's respectable, but it's not blowing the doors off either. Usually we use that $250,000 for this time of year as like a bit of a barometer. If we're north of that, it's looking all right. And we are north of that, closing in on 350,000 right now. That looks even better when you see that the ADV is back below 700K, 685,000. But even that, 685 is respectable for the last day of July heading into August. The two seasonal terrible periods for, vol and options paper usually are, August and December, late December, the dog days of August. So we're heading into one of those now. So you can be easily forgiven for expecting that ADV to drop below 500,000. So far it hasn't. So that at least is something. SPY right now, no one told SPY that it's heading into August. 4.25 million contracts right now. The ADV about 7.25. So it's already north of halfway there itself. The S, 1.36 million, that's about where we expect it now because the ADV is about 2.7 million, so it's pretty much exactly halfway there. Intriguing stuff for the S. Small caps, 611,000 contracts, so small caps looking a little bit robust, especially when you consider their ADV has now fallen back below 1 million, back to 867,000. Small caps, IWM up 0.75%, so they're taking the bit in their teeth while the rest of the market kind of languishing today. No one told small caps they have to wait for Apple earnings. They're not hanging out in a tepid, lukewarm bath. They're on the rampage out there. Small caps kicking it up today. And the Qs, again, that day that ends in Y, the Qs going to be putting up some numbers today, about 1.62 million contracts right now. The ADV about almost 3.2 million. So we're talking pretty much almost exactly halfway there as well. Let's get out to the single names and see what kind of day we have. And you know what? This has kind of been interesting of late. We've been doing this a lot lately. We have that barometer of about 300,000. That's how we know it's a banging day in single name land. And we've been just shy of it so often, and we're just shy of it again today, listeners. As we're coming into this portion of the show, 294,000. That's what it cost you to break into the top 10 today. I think we were 296 on our last show. We've been just kissing that 300K level a few times, but just right below lately. And again today, so not quite there, but still an impressive day nonetheless. And also some shakeups in the top half, which is always fun to see. You know it's earnings season then, listeners, when we got some shakeups in the top 10. Number 10 gets you to NKLA, up $0.50, or about 21% today, trading about 2.75. So NKLA popping. I guess they got a new order under their belts, or just more buyers than sellers, listeners. Either way, they are popping pretty hard. Nice rally from their 52-week low of 52 cents, which came almost 2 months ago, beginning of June out there. So they've gone from about 52 cents to 2.75. So a nice 5x return there for NKLA. Looking pretty robust out there. And again, good for number 10, 294,000. Number 9, the first half of the chip zone coming early today. 310,000 contracts on the tape for number 9. It's AMD. Trading almost 114, up nearly $1 today, nearly a full percent. So nice little pop for AMD. No one told them that the chip zone boom is over yet. They're still popping pretty hard. Number 8. Now, this is interesting. I have to really go back in the old memory banks to think the last time we saw Apple this far down on the top 10 list. It's probably another period like this. It's in August or it's a holiday December time where just nothing is trading, because literally nothing is trading in Apple today. I mean, 339,000, that is effectively nothing for Apple. That's a rounding error for them, and that's what they have on the tape today. So nobody is trading Apple, maybe because it's only up $0.25. Trading 196 and change, so not looking that far, about almost exactly 2 points from its pretty much all-time high there, but not enough apparently to drive some action in the fruit company today. Everyone's waiting for the aforementioned earnings apparently, so no joy for Apple. My goodness. Number 8. Put that in the record books, listeners. Number 7, the other half of the chip zone, also coming a little bit earlier today. It's NVIDIA. Usually we expect to see them somewhere in the top 5. Today is number 7, 349,000 contracts. NVIDIA taking a rare respite today, off about 1/3 of a point. Trading 467.10. So they can sell off. It is possible, listeners. And then tied for the number 7/6 spot, actually. They are tied with the artist formerly known as Facebook, now Meta. Also 349,000 contracts. They're off $5.50 today, about 1.7%, trading a little bit shy of 320. Again, 320, man, we were just talking about $88 out there not too long ago, listeners. How the worm has turned in all things Facebook/Meta. Let's go out, China on the radar again today. The headlines out of China, not great of late. Their growth, their expansion, their recovery, not exactly on the rails as a lot of people hoped. We saw that with Oatly. No one in Asia is buying oat milk, crushed their numbers. So not a lot of love coming out of China these days, but looks like that's not affecting NEO today. NEO up about 40-odd cents or nearly 3%, trading right around 15.20. So all of your cheaper, from a stock price perspective at least, cheaper manufacturers of EVs getting a nice little lift out there today. Number 5, it's NEO, 361,000. Number 4, we were just talking about them not too long ago. Was there some shady paper out there in AMC Hills today? Stock back up about 25 cents, trading a little bit shy of $5, about $4.92. Let's see, over the last month it got up to, looks like almost $6, about $5.85 or so. Nice little pop there. Of course, they gave that back. That's what we were talking about. So maybe some of that shady upside paper in AMC. Good for 461,000 today. And the number 4 spot. Number 3, we just talked about them. It's Palantir, up about $1.50 or 8.25%, trading 19.25. So it seemed like their rally had kind of run out of steam, and then bam, just popping again. They're talking about them in the same breath now as Tupperware. So maybe some of that 2021 meme stock love coming back and catching up Palantir. We know they're running away with Tupperware. Maybe they're running away with a little bit of Palantir as well. Not quite as cheap as it was. It's pretty much doubled, but still a much cheaper net roll for the fences for AI versus a Microsoft or NVIDIA or any of these other names that are many, many hundreds of dollars. You could buy a heck of a lot more Palantir. So if you want a little more sizable bite of the apple, that's probably why people are diving in. Either way, 684,000, up $1.50 today. So a nice pop for Palantir. Number 2, yes, I said number 2. How often do we say this as well? Today's a day of not quite firsts, but very rare developments out there. Tesla at the number 2 spot. 897,000 contracts for them. They're only up about 28 cents, so kind of a rounding error day for them. Even though on the day they've had a little bit more of a range. They went from about a little bit shy of 264 to about 269, so a little over $5 range on the day. So they have been moving today. Just kind of settling out right now, and that's probably why they're hanging out. Sub 1,897,000. And then the number 1 listeners, the big dog out. This another one was just $4. We were just talking about not too long ago. It does seem like maybe some of the meme kids coming back in force. SOFI taking the number 1 spot today, 964,000 contracts. My goodness. A headline out of Barron's, earnings for SOFI. Good times never seem so good. Folks are liking it. Up $1.78 today, almost 19% to the upside. So they've had a nice run since bottom out around 4.25. Not too long ago. That was back in the May time frame as well. And we were talking about some options paper out there. Of course, back in March, things looked pretty dire with the whole contagion fear. People were kind of maybe worried they were going to go the way of the dodo. They have recovered pretty aggressively. By June, they were trading 9.75 again. Then they kind of gave it up a little bit, back down to about $8 beginning of July. And since then, they've popped about $3, a little over $3 now, including a nice pop today. So, yeah, they're up over the past 6 months, up 4.5 handles or 63%. Nice pop for them. Almost 1 million contracts on the tape for them, 964,000. So nothing to sneeze at. Also, nothing to sneeze at when it comes to earnings season, because we are in it, listeners. Hopefully you're liking it, because there's a lot popping off this week. I'll just give you some highlights today. Of course, as you mentioned, SOFI. We got CNA popping off. Looks like they were before the bell today as well. I got Rambus. That's a name I haven't talked about in forever, listeners. That's after the bell today as well. They were a hot one back in the earlier .com go-go days. Remember a lot of folks being all hyped about Rambus, but again, a name we haven't talked about in a bit. Tomorrow before the bell, we got JetBlue. We've got coming up tomorrow as well. We got Uber, Pfizer, EA, Match Group. Remember, they own all of Online Love now, pretty much. Any aspect of Online Love, with the exception of Bumble, Match Group pretty much has it. Caterpillar, Merck, and Starbucks, AMD, and Pinterest. Wednesday, we got CVS, PayPal, Shopify, Qualcomm, Etsy, something called WWE. I'm not familiar with it. And Robinhood. If I haven't even talked about Robinhood on the old network. And I know last I checked on them, they were well north. Yeah, well north of $10 again. $12.84 today for Robinhood. Let's see, over the past month, they're up nearly $3, $2.87. So all that move, pretty much exactly all that move north of 10 has come over the last month. It's $2.87 worth. So wow, impressive stuff there for Robinhood. Can they hold it? We shall see. On Thursday, we've got Expedia, Hasbro. So everyone's talking Mattel with Barbie. Let's see what Hasbro can do. Amazon, something called Apple, not familiar with them. Coinbase, DraftKings, Airbnb. You got a lot popping off this week, listener. There's something for everybody. It's one of those weeks out there. Let's look at a couple of these really quickly. We got the earnings move reports coming up for you, listeners. We can tell you what they're pricing and what they're expecting. Let's go out to Uber. They're tomorrow before the bell. 47 1/3 is where they were trading. They're pricing in about 3 3/4 worth of juice. In the past, they moved about 3 1/4, so about $0.50 extra juice in Uber. Is it warranted? That's up to you. Tomorrow after the bell, AMD 110 is where they were trading. They're pricing in about $8.20. In the past, they moved $6.50. So a fair amount of extra juice. But then again, this AI wave, easy for me to say to listeners, can't talk about AI. This AI wave is really just casting the market just topsy-turvy these days. So you maybe argue that's not enough juice. And then going out to the gaming side tomorrow after the bell as well. EA, they have to start announcing that their games being made by AI, listeners. Then bam, that stock triple overnight. You watch. EA 138, almost 139. They were pricing in $5.11. In the past, they moved $5.09. So that's interesting. Exactly what they've done in the past. That's kind of interesting. Match Group tomorrow after the bell as well. $45 even is where they were trading. They were pricing in about $3.50. In the past, they've moved $2.91. So almost 60 cents worth of extra juice out there. Interesting. Starbucks tomorrow after the bell as well. 101 3/4. They're pricing in $4.59. In the past, they moved $5.20. So less juice in Starbucks. That's interesting. Maybe some of their input price pressure starting to ease. Either way, interesting stuff. CVS, second before the bell, $75.10 is where they were trading. They're pricing in about $3. In the past, they've moved about $3.17. So not a heck of a lot to talk about in good old CVS. Let's just so many popping off. Listen, let's go to WWE. A name one or two of you may be familiar with. Trading 105 3/4. They're popping off the second before the bell. They're pricing in $4.62. In the past, they moved $4.53. So another one's pretty much exactly in line. You know, they are post this very bizarre corporate action that they did with the Endeavor Group. So probably taking some of the vol out of that stock, at least in the near term. Robinhood, second after the bell. Just talking about them, 12 3/4 right now, listeners. They're pricing in $1 and about $1/4. In the past, they moved about $1. So there you go. 25 cents worth of extra juice. That's a decent little premium out there. Is it merited? Again, that's up to you. That's why they run these numbers for you, listeners. Let's go out to Qualcomm. They are second after the bell. 124 even is where they were trading. They're pricing in, this is interesting, $7.42. In the past, they've moved $9.60. So $2.20 less juice right off the top there. Wow, that's surprising. I guess they're not expecting much of anything out of Qualcomm right now. That's kind of interesting. Let's do PayPal really quickly as well. Same day, second after the bell. 73 and about a half is where they were trading. They're pricing in about exactly $5. In the past, they moved about exactly $6. So a whole buck off the top pretty much there as well. That's kind of interesting. We'll have to keep an eye on these. Of course, we'll have many more reports coming out for you throughout the week. Listeners, the season still hanging out a wee bit north of the par level. I think the last I checked, it was somewhere around 120-odd%. Of course, that'll probably come in as well. Stay tuned for updated earnings, season reports, and everything else. The second we get them, they'll be in your hot little hands as well as we keep on rolling right on into the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, everybody, let's get weird, let's get wild, let's get perhaps whimsical It's the Odd Block. Let's unleash the Eye of Sauron, see what it fixes its gaze upon today. We were just talking about this name, listeners. They were coming in on our top 10 today at the number 1 spot. So maybe not surprising. I'm going to talk about them in a little bit in the old Odd Block as well. This is SoFi, like we said, trading right around $11.50 right now, up nearly $2 or about 20% today. On the year, the deal a year ago, they were trading 6 and change, 6 and a third. They actually popped hard a year ago on their earnings as well, up to about 8 and a quarter. So they popped nearly $2 about a year ago as well. Then over the course of the year, they had some issues. They actually sold off the first time to around 4 and a quarter back in December of last year. People forget about that. Everyone remembers, the March sell-off and the contagion for a lot of these names. But they sold off the first time back in December. Then they rallied it again in that first rally, the beginning of the year. Listen, they rallied it up to nearly $8. February 2nd, they hit 7 3/4. Then they kind of fell off a cliff again, all the way through to about May. They got into that 4, maybe not quite as low as 4 and a quarter, about 4.5 range in May. And then since then, they pretty much haven't looked back. In fact, by June 14th, they were already trading 9 3/4. They had pretty much gotten back pretty much everything and then some by June already. And then they kind of gave a little bit back, like we said, in July, and then rallying again over the last month. So it's been an intriguing few months out there, but everyone who thinks it was just this straight-up trajectory is missing a few of the waypoints along the way. And coming into today, what did our Eye of Sauron find? A lot of paper going up in SoFi, as you might imagine. As we just said earlier, it is our number 1 mover and shaker out there. So sometimes it's difficult to see the forest for the trees out there in names like this. The volume today is about 4x what they're typically doing already and probably on pace to do more. But we did notice something interesting, and maybe Mr. Rock Lobster, you probably noticed these as well. There were some very, very near-dated puts going up today. So again, they are post-earnings, so earnings already happened. It's not an earnings play. It's a post-earnings play. We saw about 6,998 of the AUG 11 puts expiring this week on the 4th, going up for 31 cents. Paper gobbling those up, saying, gimme, gimme, gimme. That was about a 103 vol. And then they've since then have just been off to the races with these things, just gobbling them up and gobbling them up and gobbling them up. A total, as we kicked off the show, of these 46,000 of them had traded, and that's it's about 48,000 now. So they really like these AUG 11 puts expiring this week. So is this just a big fade, listeners? Are folks saying, this move is just too fast, too far, we got to fade some of it? Are they doing it with stock? These blocks didn't go up tied, but with so many of these going up, you got to probably wonder if there isn't some stock in a back pocket somewhere, in which case this trade is more of kind of like a weekly straddle. The thing can't stay here. It's got to go somewhere, and that's kind of what they're wagering on. But looking here, another block of 4,400 for 31 cents, nearly 4,000 for 48 cents, 2,000 for 44 cents, 1,500 for 50 cents. On and on it goes all day long, listeners. So these AUG 11 puts expiring this Friday, pretty popular. Mr. Rock Lobster, what are your thoughts on this put bonanza in everyone's new favorite darling, SoFi?
Like before, weren't we following long call buyers and stuff in here?
We were, yes.
Call buying paper. I think it was around the Supreme Court, and they were doing they were trying to do the student loan thing and see if it was going to be legal or not, which seems like it's back. They appeal. I don't know what's going on, but ever since then, I believe SoFi has come kind of screaming higher. They had good earnings today. And I think this put buyer is just trying to see if Mark and I were looking at this paper. I don't know if this put buyer thinks they're either closing some short puts, and I don't think there was enough open interest on these. These were the 11s, right? Let me see here.
These are the 11s.
Yeah. So it wasn't a close. This was a dead open. Yep. And we were trying to decide what kind of paper it was. Anyway, but I think it was, kind of betting on that it's not going to hold above the 11 handle. And because we were looking at various paper in here, because there were puts closed and traded in the 04 cycle all the way down to the 7s. So I think there was some considerable short put paper that is being closed today. Volatility is down pretty big everywhere. Like, so the SEP cycle is down to 63. The August 04 cycle, the volatility is down 50 points. So the straddle's back down to $1 on the 11.5. It appears that this person is buying puts. However, it does not pass our one-day sniff test. They're already down money on these. So at least as far as today goes, I didn't think it was a terrible idea for the stock to pull back. I just don't know how, your chance to exit might be brief. That's all on these. So, but yeah, there's 48,000 have traded on the day, and so far, I don't think any buyers have made any money yet so far.
No, probably not. It's an aggressive one. If you're just buying these straight up, listeners, if you're coming in, picking up your 10 lot, you need this thing to fall out of bed a little bit. And so intriguing stuff. So far, it is not doing that, listeners. You are fading the crowd, but we've seen crazier things out there. And you're right, we do have some SOFI trades we're probably going to pay off on options oddities. Some things we've been tracking out there for a little bit. Listeners, join us on the Friday show to go for a deeper dive into perhaps some SOFI fun as we keep on rolling. Let's go out to a name we haven't talked about in quite some time. This is Tempur Sealy International, ticker symbol TPX. You know them, mattresses, all that fun stuff. They actually acquired Sealy back in 2012, Tempur-Pedic. That's when this combo name was formed. Ticker symbol TPX, trading $44.10. So a name can sell off today, listeners, and today it is Tempur Sealy, off nearly $2, or a little over 4%. On the year, let's see, how has the year been for mattresses? This very opaque, ridiculous world of mattresses. Ever shop for a mattress, listeners? It is ridiculous. Fake brand names, fake model numbers, it's all a bunch of nonsense out there. They've done a good job of really trying to disguise how this whole industry works. So Tempur Sealy at the top of it here. $27.84 is where they were trading a year ago. So they're up about 58% on the year. Nice pop for them, about 16.25. They rallied the first time back in February up to pretty much exactly this level, 44.25. That was in February 2nd they hit that. Then they kind of gave it back up. By May of this year, they were back down to about $35 again. So off not quite $10, but pretty darn close. And then since May, they kind of vacillated around 35 for a while. Then they started rallying again, back up to where they are right now. They hit 47.17, looks like last week. That's kind of their high for the year, and kind of vacillating around, but now giving some of that back again today. So interesting stuff out there in the world of mattresses. And let's see what our Eye of Sauron found. Doesn't seem like our Eye of Sauron thinks folks are too near-term optimistic on this name, Mr. Rock Lobster. Somebody came in this morning in good old TPX. And again, we haven't talked about this name in a while. Let's see. What is the ADV in good old TPX? I was going to guess about 1,500 or 2,000, but even that was optimistic, listeners. It's 887. So not the most active of names, which is why they had to lift the offer on a pretty wide market. They came in to buy the AUG 40 puts, listeners. They bought 5,307 of these bad boys, lifting the offer for 50 cents. That is a 52 vol if you are intrigued. The stock was actually looks like maybe a little bit higher. Yeah, the stock was about 20-odd cents higher. So they got a little bit of a downside move in the stock working in their favor. So I suppose that's good. They passed the first Rock Lobster test. Worth noting, there are earnings, and they are coming up pretty soon. They are on Thursday of this week. So we'll know pretty soon whether these puts are going to pay off or not. But yeah, pretty decently meaty puts for being $4 and change out of the money. So maybe somebody expecting this near-term run in TPX to perhaps give up the ghost, at least heading out of earnings. Mr. Rock Lobster, sir, another put palooza, this time not quite as sizable, obviously, but this time in your favorite name. I know you love this name. This is TPX, sir. What say you?
This is like just looking at, I mean, I didn't know, I didn't see any stock match to this, just because also they 30-50 market, the puts went up 50. So usually indicating buyer, and it just looks like they're, expecting some rotten earnings play is all I can see. However, most stocks this cycle, I think, have done pretty well on earnings. So But this is more like consumer discretionary. Like, I think mattresses are sort of one of those things where, if you got some extra bucks, you're like, oh, I'm going to get a new mattress. But you're like, all right, if you don't have any extra bucks, you're like, I'll buy a new mattress next year. Okay. Just and from what you said as well, it's not like they're giving them away. It's funny that Tempur-Pedic, the newer brand, bought the much older brand Sealy. It looks like just a straight up, and as of right now, they're looking pretty good. Like Tempur-Pedic's definitely, it's kind of fallen apart a little bit before earnings. So, maybe somebody is seeing sub 40, which the stock hasn't really been in for quite a while here. Like, well, let's see. Okay. It's had a 10% rally since the beginning of June, and 2023 started the year at around $37. So, I think these have a reasonable shot, but it's literally, binary switch on the earnings for sure. Because after earnings, these things are going to be tostito, one way or the other. They're going to be worth a lot of money. They're going to be worth nothing.
Yep, we'll know in a couple of days whether this one is a winner. Speaking of knowing if something is a winner, listener, actually, we're kind of coming up against it. We could save this review for another day because Uncle Mike is waiting in the wings. He's fresh. He's fired up. He's raring to go. It is Monday after all, so let's get to it right now. A little bit of the old strategy block.
It's time to dispense options, wit, wisdom, and education. It's time for the Strategy Block.
All right, listeners, now you've been waiting for it patiently. It is time for your 10-minute epic treatise on the classic match that was Bam Bam Bigelow versus Lawrence Taylor. Have at it, sir.
Yeah, don't have much on that one. If you want to go into that, that's kind of the dead period of my wrestling life and my following of WWE. So don't have much on that. If we go back to the 80s, I can give you more detail, or even the late 90s in my WCW Monday Night War era when we'd always argue in college of which was better, WWF or WCW, and we'd always watch them both. We'd argue about which one was better. We'd all make great points, and it was just wrestling paradise, quite frankly, as a college student. Can't deny that. But with that being said, the strategy I want to go through today is on exercising an option. This actually happened to me today. I had one thing that I'll do at times as like a bond alternative is I'll find stocks that are highly volatile, and a lot of times what you can do is you can sell a very favorable collar on them to where the risk reward is very favorable. And there's advantages and disadvantages to it, but essentially it's a collar. And so today, a couple of those, sometimes they're going to work, sometimes they're not. But the point is that you do it for the risk reward. And so had a couple today. I wanted to do some reallocating in the portfolio that the stocks just got mauled, quite frankly. And thank goodness we had the put, so there really wasn't any risk to it. But what we decided to do with it was that we wanted to shift the money elsewhere just because the stocks were down so much, which was fine. We were planned for it from the get-go in case that were to happen with the put options. So what I did was I wanted to, the first instinct that I have whenever I have something that I don't want anymore, I would typically want to sell the stock and sell the stock and sell the married put. Now, we had already gotten out of the covered call for a penny a while ago, so it was just a married put position at this point. But when doing so, I tried to look to see if I could actually do those things, and I could not. I could not do them because the bid-ask spreads were very wide on the put option, and there's still a little bit of a bid-ask on the stocks. I mean, nothing like a penny or two, nothing major, but my point is when doing so, I could not get out of the trade for greater than what the strike price was. So let's say, for example, the strike price is $50 per share, and I wanted to sell the put, sell the stock. Well, I should be coming away with at least $50 per share in doing so. I could not. So what I decided to do is I tried to just put it out there at parity, meaning I tried to sell it as a married put, stock and put together for $50 in this example. It wasn't $50, it was a different stock. But I tried doing that and I couldn't do it. So I wanted my cash, and there's no extrinsic value in the option whatsoever. So I actually exercised the option today. Now, typically, I'm not a fan of exercising options because you can usually sell the option for more than what you could exercise it for on the open market because there's extrinsic value in it. In this instance, it's still a ways away from expiration. There was no intrinsic value in the options. So today was an instance to where I actually exercised the option. Not something you do very often, but doing that was a better alternative than selling the put and selling the stock, because I would have gotten it below parity, and that would be bad. I don't want to be selling the put and selling the stock for $49.99 when I can exercise the option and get out of the whole thing for $50. So food for thought on exercising an option. Most of the time, I would say 99% of the time, it does not make sense to exercise an option. But I wanted to share with you an instance of today, at least in my situation, where it actually did. And that's my strategy block.
Look at you, you degenerate options exerciser, you. I knew you had some secrets up your sleeve. And today, we've discovered him, listeners. He secretly exercises all of his options. That's the kind of guy Uncle Mike is. As we keep on rolling right on into Around the Block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to Around the Block, the portion of the show where we tell you what we're keeping an eye on for the rest of this week. Let's check in really quickly as well with our question of the week. And last week's, well, we'll save the payoff for last week's question for the crypto rundown coming up in a little bit, because it is very crypto-oriented. Intriguing results there. This week's question, though, just went live a little bit before showtime today, listeners, so it's been live less than an hour. Get over there, add options, make your voice heard. It's kind of one we talked about a lot on this show, mostly on vol views. It's VXX. VXX had a rocky year last year. Are you trading it again, or have you moved on? Gave you 4 choices, 2 yes, 2 no. Yes, I never stopped trading it, so I've been trading it this whole time. Or yes, they lured me back in this year with what the product's been up to, kind of performing normally again. Or no, I just don't trust it anymore, which is certainly understandable. I was in that camp. Might still be in that camp. And no, I trade other products instead. So, Mr. Rock Lobster, this has been an interesting question. You and I have chatted about this multiple times over the past year. What are your thoughts? Are folks slinging VXX again or not? And then what is your vote, sir?
Well, I'm going to say that the folks are saying, no, I don't trust it. However, they have lured me back for some short-term trades. I have not gone into the long-term put trade, although some of my students gave it a whirl again. And when we had that little bout of volatility in March, now all the puts that they bought then are about $4 or $5, $6 in the money. So needless to say, it worked out fairly well for them. So that's kind of where I am with it. It's like, it's one of those things where I wouldn't allocate it as I changed some strategies just to keep it more like 30 days and in, and kind of as good as those longer term trades used to be. They don't get the same amount of dollars as they used to, not even remotely close. So anyway, that's where I am on that. So for me personally, they lured me back to the short term, but I think our listeners will say I don't trust it.
And what are you watching for the rest of the week, sir?
I think Apple earnings. I feel like this is the last peg in the AI big earnings, whatever. I guess we have NVIDIA, but that's still a few weeks. Good. So I'm curious is that we still, I think there's a little lingering rate thing going on, because VIX is not able to make lows, even though realized vol is relatively low. So that's a little bit of a disconnect, and that's the big thing that I'm watching currently. And even a side thing, I heard a rumor but not confirmed that the SEC is telling Coinbase not to trade other cryptos. So I was kind of wondering about that, but that's like a little tinfoil hatty thing, and I'm not sure if that's accurate or not, but I have good authority that it might be.
Well, stock's up $3. So, they said, Financial Times reporting it. They asked Coinbase to halt trading in everything except Bitcoin. Their CEO said it. So I guess that's coming straight from the horse's mouth. Apparently,
yes.
the market doesn't care. It's up 3% today, or about $2.83. So
yeah, which I found that very interesting, like that whole dynamic. So anyway, as usual, since you can't trust anything you read or see on social media or anything, you got to kind of see how time plays the thing out. So
interesting stuff indeed. Mr. Uncle Mike, I know you don't really have a dog in the VXX game, but if you have a vote, have at it. More importantly, what do you think our audience is voting for? And then what are you keeping an eye on until the Thursday show?
I think the audience is going to stay away from it. And then in terms of what I'm watching for the rest of this week, of course, there's the Apple earnings like Andrew had said. But it's also watching the 4,600 mark and watching to see what bonds do, in that we've had just last year, we had all the rate hikes. And so, of course, bonds went down. But now we're kind of right back to where we started on the year with bonds. And we've still had a little bit more of rate hikes. So continuing to watch the bonds and seeing how they're going to react to what the Fed did last week, or just to see if they already have reacted, and just seeing where they're going.
Unfortunately, that music means we're going out of here, listeners. But before we go, let's check in on the early voting so far. And I'm surprised, 37.5% of you saying, yes, I never stopped trading VXX. Wow. And then 25% saying, yes, they lured me back. So you're talking 62.5% of you right now combined are still trading VXX. So interesting. That's early voting. I have a feeling that's going to change markedly by the end of the week. Get in there, listeners. If you agree, disagree, you want to change that number, Ad Options is the place to go. 25% saying, no, I trade other products. 12.5% right now saying, no, I just don't trust it. So that one actually coming in last, which is surprising out there. Let's go around the horn and see what everybody has cooking up your sleeve, listeners, that you might want to check out. Let's start in the land of the pit. Mr. Rock Lobster, are you surprised by these numbers? And B, if folks want to debate VXX with you, where should they go? What should they do?
Well, I am surprised by the numbers, but that just goes to show you have a exceptionally degenerate vol-selling group of listeners.
Yes, exceptionally degenerate.
888-TRADE-01 or... So check us out. Anything here, you get 10% off Option Pit if you say you listen to the show. Or go over to Money Map Press and look at my weekly profit cycles if you want to learn how to trade SPY and VIX. But why would you need to? Because they don't go anywhere anymore. We'll sit and just watch that lukewarm bathwater continue to roll.
All right, Mr. Uncle Mike, same question for you, sir. Where should folks go if they want to discuss all this in more detail?
Check out my website, stcharleswealth.com, if you're looking for a financial advisor who delves in the option product, if it's appropriate for the client, of course. Follow me on Twitter at Mike Tosaw, TOSAW.
There you go, stcharleswealth.com or at Mike Tosaw, all one word, on Twitter. We got to get on out of here. Back again in a little bit, like we said, some stuff popping off in the realm of crypto. So I'll be back in a wee bit to break it all down on the crypto rundown. If you're listening live, stay tuned. We'll be back in a little bit for that. If you're listening after the fact, just hit next on your platform of choice, and it'll all be there waiting for you. Back again throughout the rest of the week with our usual assortment of content. And, of course, back again on Thursday, another episode of The Option Block. Stay safe out there, everybody.
You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network, the home of the Options Podcast. For more quality options programs, visit theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app available in the iTunes and Google Play stores. Select programs are also available via live stream at mixlr.com/options-insider. That's mixlr.com/options-insider. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, stocktwits.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.